And now I'd like to introduce Dan Geltrude on the show, CPA extraordinaire. Dan, what a great job you did on Channel 11 Monday morning. I was so proud of you. I'd kind of like to pick up where we left off last week. We talked about President-elect Trump's deal with Carrier to save jobs. Do you feel like it's a good idea for the president to get in the nuts and bolts of negotiating with individual companies who are threatening to move?
Well, let me first start off with the situation we currently have with Carrier. Right now, Donald Trump appears to be at war with Chuck Jones, who's the union leader over at Carrier, and they seem to be battling over how many jobs were actually saved. So right now, Chuck Jones is saying it was only 730. I think that Trump really, really needed a win out of the box economically. So it goes to the point of your question as to whether Donald Trump should really be getting this granular with individual companies and what their plans are. I don't think generally that's what he should be doing. So I think this early, still being president-elect, him diving into this situation, it's in Indiana. You got Mike Pence there. It was a perfect storm for him to get involved specifically with Carrier. Plus, he had talked about Carrier during the campaign. I believe that the best way for Donald Trump to handle these types of situations going forward is through his policies. He is going to be far, far too busy to get involved with what every single corporation may be planning on doing as far as moving out of the country. To your point regarding tariffs, I don't like tariffs. I really believe in the free market, but I'm going to qualify that as long as it's fair. So to me, the reason why you would start using tariffs is because you have to level the playing field. A much better way to approach this free market is for Trump to go down the path of incentivizing corporations to stay in the United States, to do their manufacturing here at home.
Wall Street is just having an unbelievable time. Another all-time high yesterday. I know people with 401ks are dancing in the streets. Why do you think that that Wall Street has exploded as it has? Is there some other reason than the Trump effect?
Well, everyone has theories about what makes the stock market move, and I don't know who's right or what theory is correct. I certainly have my own views on this. To start with, I think what we're seeing in terms of reaction of the stock market, presumably because of Donald Trump, is because Trump's cabinet picks to start with are very pro-business. And I think that's sending a message to Wall Street to say, hey, this is going to be an administration that's going to be focused in on the economy. It's going to be focused in on corporate America. And I also think it's related to two components of Reaganomics, which Trump seems to be adopting and perhaps turning into Trumponomics. And I think there's four components, but I think right now there's two components that Trump is really focusing in on. It's cutting of taxes and it's reducing regulations. And let's take one sector of the stock market as an example here, because we have seen banks and financial institutions really, really struggling over the past 8 years. And the reason for that, presumably, is because of the amount of regulations that have been placed on financial institutions. And Trump has been very clear about his desire to start getting rid of all these regulations. Now, the banking industry is heavily regulated. And let's even go a step down from there, specifically related to community banks. We have seen a dramatic drop in the amount of community banks in this country. The reason for that is that they just simply couldn't keep up with the cost of regulations. So now when you take off those handcuffs, these banks are going to be able to do business more freely. Now, there's another side of that, and where there's concern as to whether the reduction of regulation with financial institutions is ultimately going to produce a repeat of 2008. So that's the juggling act. Where do we line this up where we're not going to be handcuffing businesses or financial institutions, and where, these companies, unregulated, are really going to abuse the system? Tough balance to strike.
It'll be interesting. Trump said during the campaign that the market there was a big bubble about to burst, but that bubble is getting bigger and bigger. Also, President-elect Trump is battling with Boeing over the cost of the new Air Force One, $4 billion. What do you think about this? Is Boeing gouging the United States government?
Well, I don't think that every fight that Trump gets in is a good one. However, in this particular case, I actually like the pick. I do like the battle because I like the message. Now, whether it's true or not that Boeing is overcharging the federal government, Trump's got an issue he can really run with. He's claiming, don't know if it's true, claiming that Boeing is going to be charging the federal government $4 billion to build, I don't know if it's one or two Air Force One models. So the issue here from a public relations standpoint is about government waste and about nobody watching the store, and companies that are doing business with the federal government are able to have a free-for-all and charge whatever they want. So I think Trump here is trying to send a message that he's going to be watching, he's going to be making sure that he's not taken advantage of, and he's going to start tightening up the spending. This also goes to his brand, which is the master negotiator. It's the art of the deal. So he wants to send a message he's not going to be taken advantage of. He's going to be the one watching the spending personally, although we know that may not be true. And let's face it, that's why he was elected. Trump is a businessman. Presumably, the characteristics that make someone a strong business person is what he's going to be using during his presidency. So I think the battle with Boeing is a good one on many levels. If Boeing really is gouging the government, then obviously he's onto it. Presumably it's going to be fixed, and he's sending a strong message out there to other government contractors and to the public at large. Nobody is going to take advantage of the U.S. federal government during a Trump administration.
Many people do not understand federal interest rates, the concept of how it works. Trump says the rates are too low. Isn't that a good thing for people, or can you just kind of explain how federal interest rates work? What's your take on it, Dan?
So low interest rates feel really good when you're out there looking for a loan because money is cheap. At the same time, low interest rates, artificially low interest rates, which is what Trump's claim is like a drug. It becomes an addiction, and it's not going to last. Now, the other side of this low interest matter is it's not very good for savings. It's very detrimental to retirees in this country because those who have saved in their bank accounts literally are not getting any return on their investment. What I think Trump is emphasizing more, and again, he comes from a real estate background. What he's saying is when interest rates are low, which presumably is good for people in real estate, there's another side of that. The other side is, well, I'll give you an example. If you're going to buy a house and you say, how much can I afford to spend each month? And let's just make up a number. I could afford $2,000 a month. If interest rates are low, because that's part of the calculation of the monthly payment, well, that means there's room for the price of the property to go up. So the bubble, and specifically the real estate bubble that gets created with low interest rates, is it pushes up the price of real estate. And when real estate becomes overvalued, at some point there's an adjustment, and we've heard the term out in the market, I'm underwater on my property value, which means you ended up paying more or you have much more debt on the property than what it's worth. And that becomes a big, big problem, and that takes us back to our issues in 2008.
And if you're just tuning in, Dan Geltrude is with us. This segment is called Dollars $0.50, broadcast every Saturday morning at 7:45 a.m. to 8 a.m. right here on WIBG Radio. The Obamacare deadline is quickly approaching, December 15th. It's this week. It is made a huge impact, a negative impact on the U.S. economy. You could suggest that the reason that we have Republican Congress and President-elect Trump is because of Obamacare. If Trump and Congress repeal and replace Obamacare as they have promised, will that be a positive or a negative?
Let me start by saying this, and I've said it before. Trump has a better shot at being successful in building the wall than fixing health care. And let me tell you why. The facts are this. Americans are getting older, fatter, and sicker. And that combination related to health care is not a good one. So with that said, because that's the environment we're dealing with, let's just roll back to Obamacare specifically for a moment. There are three key mandates related to Obamacare. There's the individual mandate, there's the mandate that insurers have to cover pre-existing conditions, and there's the mandate that you cannot increase the risk burden for those with pre-existing conditions, meaning you can't charge someone astronomical premiums just because they're sick. Now, Trump has said as part of repeal and replace that he is going to keep and plans to keep the pre-existing aspect in health care. Here's the challenge. That's a really, really big expense. What's driving premiums up, what's driving deductibles up is those costs related to pre-existing conditions. Now, we've also taken 20 million new people onto our health care insurance rolls. Now they have coverage. Presumably, many of them are sick, so the costs are going up. How are we going to do this? What I'm saying is, I'm not sure the math is going to work. We have a parallel situation to Social Security. In our healthcare system, King, do we have enough young, healthy people participating to be able to cover the back end? I don't see the numbers adding up. I see Trump with an enormous challenge because healthcare is a huge drain on the economy, and Trump's position in this, we have to be strong at home before we can be strong abroad. The key to that is the economy, and we have a huge ball and chain on us related to Obamacare.
Dan, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, and I think you've shed some light on some topics that not only I but our listeners really get a better idea of what's happening, and we look forward to your segment next week, 7:45 a.m., Dollars and Cents. Have a great day.
Thanks, King.